The Uruk-Hai were the brutal warriors of Middle-earth, the strongest breed of orcs, who are taller than other orcs but shorter than men. However, tragedy was about to strike, and everything was going to change. Greetings, and welcome back to this new video. Today we'll be looking into what happened to the Uruk-Hai after Isengard was defeated and the war ended. The Uruk-Hai were a new breed of orcs that first appeared out of Mordor in the last years of the stewardship of Denethor during the Third Age. They were initially bred by Sauron and were in the service of Barad-dûr, the folk of Mordor. They referred to Dark Lord Sauron as the Great Eye and used the symbol of the red eye of Sauron, which was also painted on their shields.
This is no rabble of mindless orcs. These are Uruk-Hai. Their armor is thick and their shields broad.
Uruk-Hai was a black speech word which meant orc folk. The name almost sounds like that of the Olog-Hai, meaning troll folk, who were a breed of very strong, vicious trolls that could survive sunlight. This new breed of orcs had that same capacity. They could withstand sunlight, although they hated it. The Uruk-Hai could travel during the day without being weakened. They had big hands, thick legs, and slanted eyes. They were also faster, larger, and smarter than normal orcs. The Uruk-Hai had a swarthy color and were described as black orcs of great strength. In Third Age 2475, they conquered Ithilien and destroyed the city of Osgiliath, but they were later defeated by Steward Boromir. They continued infesting Ithilien in the coming years, but had deserted it by the Third Age 2901. Take a wild guess on who secretly adored this kind of orcs? Of course, it was the wizard Saruman the White. The corrupted wizard went on to later breed the Uruk-Hai around Third Age 2990, using his dark arts in the pits of Isengard. They were released from a kind of membrane in the mud deep under Isengard. For some reason, Wizard Saruman believed that he was the first to breed Uruk-Hai, although Lord Sauron had done it before. Saruman's Uruk-Hai used the symbol of the white hand of Isengard. It was featured on their banners, helmets, and faces. The Uruk-Hai's shields had a small white hand centered on a black field. Aragorn described their gear as not resembling that of other orcs. Instead of a curved scimitar, they had short, broad-bladed swords. Their great bows were made of yew wood, with the same length and shape as those of men. Saruman promised his Uruk-Hai man-flesh as a treat, and they made up a majority of his army. There is a possibility that the Uruk-Hai were the result of crossbreeding orcs and men. There were other creatures in Saruman's armies, and under his command in the Shire that seemed to be hybrids, like the half-orcs who were as tall as men but were never described as orcs, as the Uruk-Hai were. Treebeard told Merry and Pippin that Saruman had done something dangerous to the orcs, that those orcs were more like wicked men. Treebeard wondered if they were men that Saruman had ruined, or if he had blended orcs and men, something he considered as a black evil. The Uruk-Hai army had pikemen, swordsmen, crossbowmen, sappers, scouts, and berserkers. The berserkers were the shock troops. They were quite huge and more vicious. Berserkers shaved their heads and wore helmets filled with human blood, so that when they put them on, the blood would run down their backs with a powerful scent that would send them into a killing frenzy against their enemies. They wielded double-bent swords with double spikes that the Rohirrim feared. The swords were sharp enough to cut through steel armor, and they would easily cut the Rohirrim's leather armor. Berserkers never had armor but were greatly agile. They would slay enemies without fear or pain. The sappers crewed the ballistae, handled the ladders, and carried Saruman's bombs. The scouts had light leather armor with a groin guard, wore leather helmets, and carried short swords, axes, daggers, and powerful bows of yew. The pikemen, just like their name, carried long pikes, while crossbowmen brought the crossbows. Swordsmen wielded straight, single-edged iron swords, hooked at the tip without a guard, but very deadly in the Uruk-Hai's strong grip. They also used bladed shields. The Uruk-Hai army were very efficient with siege equipment and had been trained to use crossbows with deadly accuracy. The wizard Saruman did seem to help his orcs with his sorcery. The time when Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas followed the Uruk-Hai, who had captured Merry and Pippin, Saruman used his will to bring weariness of the heart to the pursuers, while giving speed to the orcs. Some notable Uruk-Hai were Lurtz, Ugluk, Mauhur, and Lugdush. Lurtz was the first Uruk-Hai to be bred in Isengard, and he was so brutal that he killed the first thing he saw. He strangled the orc who was there for his birth. He was the strongest Uruk-Hai, and his skin was muddy brown instead of reddish like his kind. Saruman had him in command of the Uruk-Hai scouts and sent him out to find the Fellowship of the Ring. Lurtz ended up killing Boromir, but was afterwards slain by Aragorn. Ugluk was also a commander, and he led the scouts who ambushed the Fellowship of the Ring at Amon Hen and kidnapped Merry and Pippin. He later died while fighting Éomer. Lugdush was Ugluk's trusted subordinate, and he was the guard of the captives Merry and Pippin. Mauhur led an attack on the Rohirrim that surrounded Ugluk's company, but failed to drive them off. The Uruk-Hai, like the lesser orcs, seemed not to care about each other's presence. A good example was the battering ram wielders at Helm's Deep that were barging each other off of the thin bridge. They also detested the orcs and believed that they were lesser beings. However, Uruk-Hai did appear to be able to control natural urges more than the orcs. When the orcs demanded to eat the hobbits they had captured, the Uruk-Hai were protective instead. It would seem that the only way that orcs were better than them was in treachery, lying, and being devious. The Uruk-Hai of Isengard made up the core of a 10,000 fierce army in service to the wizard Saruman. Together with the Dunlendings and the common orcs of Isengard, they fought against the Rohirrim in the first and second battle of the Fords of Isen, notably slaying Prince Theodred. The Uruk-Hai army was later sent against King Theoden and his people at Helm's Deep, where they faced utter defeat in the Battle of the Hornburg. It was at this time that the wizard Saruman was brought down. He had sent a big portion of his army for their last assault on Rohan. This left the fortress of Isengard almost deserted, with only a few weak orcs to defend it. That proved to be perfect timing by the army of Ents and Huorns, led by Treebeard, to attack Isengard. They ambushed the fort and destroyed everything, not sparing the orcs. In the aftermath, Isengard was defeated, and the wizard Saruman was conquered. On the other end, at the Battle of the Hornburg, less than half of the Uruk-Hai army had survived the battle. They fled into the forest, where they were slain by the Huorns of the Fangorn forest and buried in the Death Down. But was that it? Was the whole fierce army of the Uruk-Hai trampled into nothing, never to be heard from again? Is it possible for them as a whole to have been completely wiped out? Or did some escape? Did some live to tell the tale and reminisce of the evil good old times when they tramped the earth in strength and valor? Well, it's likely that some Uruk-Hai and orcs survived, hidden in the dark corners of the world, such as the Misty Mountains or the deserted strongholds and deep recesses of Middle-earth. However, their power was broken, and they would no longer play a significant role in the affairs of the world. The aftermath of the war saw the rise of an era of peace and restoration under the leadership of King Elessar, Aragorn, in which the threats of Sauron and his servants belonged to the past. So, what are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and to subscribe so you stay informed. We hope to see you next time on a Mystical Lands journey.